We're going to take a look back at the 2020 NBA draft. We're going to look at it sort of like a redraft, not 100% a redraft, but just examining the picks, where they were made, and how much correlation we can put into the value of a draft pick, and then translate that across to the 2024 draft, which is important when we're drafting for fantasy and in dynasty leagues. That's a long intro. Michael Bolton, sorry for the delay.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and unfortunately I've got an announcement to make. I'm not actually a real person. This is just an AI-generated avatar. Yeah, that's it. That's what an avatar would say. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at LockedOnFantasyBasketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Sports are slowing down, but FanDuel still got plenty of offers for you all day, all through the summer. Every customer gets either a bonus or a boost every day on FanDuel. So go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. For these next few shows, I'm going to have to give you some things like I'm in a hostage video verification post. It is currently, I'll give you American time, it is the 1st of July, 9 p.m. Eastern, when I'm recording this, because I am currently not in the studio. I am actually over inside you guys of the United States. So I'm over there at the moment. So we're pre-recording some shows. There might be some news that's broken. I'm not going to include it in this show because I don't know that it's happened. But these shows are a little bit more evergreen and things that I can just put out just to have some stuff going while I'm not around. So what is this show? Well, I already sort of gave it away in that ridiculously long intro. We're looking back at 2020, 4 years ago, the 2020 draft. Obviously, the weird draft, the COVID situation, no in-person scouting, interviews, that sort of stuff. A little bit different scenario, but we harp on, and I'm guilty of it as well, of looking at the draft and looking at the value of where somebody was picked, and then we look at value in terms of looking at dynasty rookies or players that we draft in our redraft leagues, and we very much align ourselves on the draft pick number. How could you possibly have this guy ranked here? He went 10 spots earlier. He went 30 spots later. You are a joke. Why isn't this happening? Man, this is all over the shop. This guy obviously went here. He must be better. So what I wanted to do is give these guys a full length of a rookie contract and go in and have a look at the players picked and take a look at what actual value they returned and try to figure out whether the draft pick number actually did correlate to the value that a player returned. Now, I'm not using overall fantasy value because we know there's different fantasy value. You can use straight 9-cat, -1, 8-cat, different categories, points leagues, different formats. That's all over the shop, right? There's so many different ways to do that. As a general rule, a lot of the advanced stats will sort of have a correlation to overall fantasy value. So there's two things that I am going to use when we go through this in terms of how do I establish the value in these players. The two things I'm going to use is estimated wins, which is you've heard me talk about EPM a lot. If you go to the Dunks and Threes website, estimated wins is the conversion of EPM, which is a per minute, per possession stat, into a totals value stat. How many wins have you given your team? That's what estimated wins is. I went through all of the players from the 2020 draft, all the guys drafted, plus the notable undrafteds, about 12 to 15 undrafteds, I think 12 undrafted guys, and tallied up how many wins they've given to whatever team they were on over the course of 4 years. So total estimated wins over 4 years. The next thing I looked at was the Darko DPM, which is another all-in-one metric which is really useful, but unlike a lot of other metrics, Darko uses stuff that's in the past, but uses it as a predictive feature. It's something that helps you predict where the value of a player is going. So it takes into consideration everything that's happened, but it's all like, what's the word? What's the word when you have nuclear material where it disintegrates? I can't think of the actual... why can't I think of that word of when uranium depletes and there's a certain Anyway, I'm going to find it out because it's annoying me that I don't remember what it is. Couldn't have been a simpler word. Decay. So there's like decay-based formulas in Darko that's like, so what happened 4 years ago still is important in the overall number, but it has less importance versus what happened 2 years ago versus 1 year ago versus 6 weeks ago. And there's all formulas based on that. And it works to be predictive to try and look at where a player's value sits. Darko plus minus DPM, obviously points per possession above 0, how much you're giving to a team. So we look at what they've done in the 4 years already and the way that Darko predicts their value is going to be moving forward. So using 2 different measures to see where a player sits. I've then converted those numbers into a ranking, to sort of give us a number versus the draft pick is sort of an ordinal list anyway. You pick 1, you pick 2, you pick 3, and then I've put the estimated wins into, well, this is the first estimated wins guy, the second, the third, and the Darko first, second, third, that sort of thing. Yes? So let's see how all this played out. For those of you who don't know and you haven't seen it on the thumbnail or the image across the audio side, the 2020 draft is the Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman, LaMelo Ball, Patrick Williams, Isaac Okoro draft. That's the draft. We're 4 years in. Rookie contracts are up for these guys. And we're going to find out exactly how this played out and how much draft pick actually matters in terms of the value that these players return. So let's take a look at the players. The number to the left of the name on the video is the draft pick. The number after the name is their rank in estimated wins, combined over 4 years. The second number after that is their rank in Darko plus minus. You will not be surprised to know that Anthony Edwards was the number 1 pick, because you knew that. We all knew that. But he's also the number 1 ranked player in estimated wins, and he was the number 1 ranked player in Darko plus minus. Now, I was not a big Anthony Edwards guy at the draft. I didn't like his shot selection. I didn't like his efforts on defense. I didn't like his passing skill, but he has had outlier development. His athleticism was always awesome. His development has been great. I was very clearly wrong on that. He's been awesome, unbelievably good. A little overrated at times, but awesome. So he was the number 1 player. He's the number 1 player in estimated wins. He's the number 1 player in Darko. Nailed it. Bang on. Well done, Minnesota. The second player in estimated wins was actually the 12th overall pick, Tyrese Haliburton. Now, it seemed a bit silly at the time that Haliburton did slide that far, but there were plenty of concerns about Haliburton. He never gets to the line, which he didn't. He would never drive. He would never attempt free throws. His 3-point shooting form was very, very funky. It was very weird. And we go, is this going to translate? Well, yes. And his ability to be not a super, super high usage guy, but big enough and ramp that up and be an elite playmaker, generating good steals, has been fantastic. So Haliburton picked 12th, had the second best estimated wins and the second best Darko. Don't know that there's going to be too much disagreement there. Next is Desmond Bane. He was picked at number 30. Some concerns about Bane. Very short arms. He should never have lasted to 30. I think I had him around 20 in that draft. An older prospect, but he could handle the ball, he could shoot, he could score, he could get good usage. He is 3rd in estimated wins over those 4 years and 4th in Darko. And then the one that was one of the biggest fallers in that draft, which I thought was a bit silly that he fell that far, Tyrese Maxey, the 21st pick in that draft. He's had the 4th most estimated wins over that period, and he is 3rd in Darko. Meaning, again, Darko predicts him to be the 3rd most impactful player moving forward. So, as you can already see, out of the top 4 players, the number 1 overall pick, and then 12th, 30th, and 21st. The next one, the 5th best player in estimated wins, is the 25th overall pick, Immanuel Quickley, who gets the gigantic Kentucky guard bump, as the guy ahead of him does as well. Quickley is 5th in estimated wins, 9th in Darko plus minus. He did suffer a drop-off this season versus year 3, but the big contract now, and he is in line for a big role in Toronto as we move forward. And to round out the first 6 players, well, it's the 3rd overall pick, the rookie of the year, the first player in this class to make an all-star game, LaMelo Ball. Now, part of the reason that LaMelo Ball's estimated wins are down is he just hasn't barely played the last 2 years. And estimated wins is a cumulative stat, but it does go to show you that Ball has the 6th most estimated wins out of this class, despite really not playing the last 2 years. Like, barely playing at all. What's he combined for, like 40 games? Over 2 years, like it's something really, really bad, obviously. He is 5th in Darko plus minus, which I think there's part of that is some of the injury stuff and some lower minutes as he ramps back up from injuries. But I do expect that he will be able to jump back up into the top 3 in a Darko plus minus scenario. And I still have a lot of faith in LaMelo Ball. But that's your top 6. Right? I don't think there's too much. There will many people be too surprised there. I guess people seeing quickly over Ball, but that's really just a volume thing in terms of estimated wins, getting that value in there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. We know that summer means less sports, and it can be annoying. We love sports. We love watching sports. We love doing everything with them. Still things are going on. WNBA's out there, PGA, and of course Major League Baseball. You can bet on that every day if you want. Summer League is about to start. In fact, by the time you're watching this, maybe actually this California Classic has started. I'm not sure. But FanDuel, to help you out, to give you a little bit of extra sauce, they're giving you, every customer, every day, a boost or a bonus. Every single day. Every single customer, all summer long. So head across to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel is an official partner of Major League Baseball, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, so I think you get the idea of how we're looking through this show now. Let's take a look at the next batch of 6 players and where their value sits in terms of the what they've been able to bring. The 7th best player in estimated wins is a shock to me, and that's the depressed penis, Saddiq Bey. I think largely some of that with Bey is just playing a lot of minutes. A lot of that, undeserved, I thought. I'm not a big Bey guy. He's totally reasonable as a bench player. He's obviously... he may have signed somewhere by now, but he's not going to play much in the 24-25 season. He was 7th in estimated wins. Fittingly, only 16th in Darko, and he was the 19th pick. And I think that's about right. The estimated wins is just playing a ton of minutes. Way too many minutes in Detroit and even too many in Atlanta, and that pushed him up. But he got all those minutes. The next one, number 28 overall pick, was Jaden McDaniels. McDaniels is 8th overall in estimated wins over the 4 years. He barely did anything as a rookie. His last season was actually well down in estimated wins as well versus the year before. But 18th in Darko, because again, I think that some of the impact that McDaniels makes is relatively overrated. And we know that for a fantasy point of view as well. He doesn't do anything. He's a very good defender, but offensively there are some struggles. But he's been playing a very good role. He's a very key part of what Minnesota does. And he's there. Number 11. I was a little bit shocked at these numbers. Devin Vassell was... Well, not number 11. Devin Vassell was the 11th overall pick. He's 9th in estimated wins. I thought he really came on last season. Darko does not like his game, which is something that I'm going to really dig into. 30th only in Darko. That's a really low number for Devin. I thought Vassell took big steps forward. It's going to be interesting to see how things go with Chris Paul there this season next to him. I think Vassell can continue to break out more. I don't think he's ever going to be like an all-star level player, but close enough to it. But interesting that he came out as 30th. Number 16 overall pick was Isaiah Stewart. He's played way too much as well, much like Saddiq Bey. He is 10th in estimated wins. He is 24th only in Darko. That sounds about right. And his run as being a starter in Detroit, I think, is finally over. They signed Tobias Harris. There's Ron Holland. There's Asar Thompson. Jalen Duren's at center. Stewart's not going to start. Thank God. So I think we're done with that. And yeah, that 24 in Darko value is probably about right. The first second-round player appears on this list. At number 41 overall pick was Trey Jones. He's 11th in estimated wins, and he did not play really at all as a rookie. And in Darko, he's 15th. Now, he is going to lose so much value this season because Chris Paul is going to take his position, and he is best suited to being a backup point guard. He was totally okay once he jumped in there last season as the starter, but overall, he is a backup. But getting that value out of pick number 41 is great. Number 9 is Denny Avdia, who had some real struggles early in his career. 12th overall in estimated wins and 17th in Darko. I maintain that the mini breakout that Denny had has been overrated. I think he obviously improved. He does need a situation where other guys are out of the way and he has the ball a lot more. I love the improvements in shooting. It's not probably going to hold at that level. And we'll really see what he's able to do on a team that, even though they're bad, Portland, they are stronger than you think. And he's not going to just have the ability to have the ball the whole time. So Denny at pick 9 was actually 12th in estimated wins and 17th in Darko. Again, I do think that there is an overrating of the value that Denny Avdia provided. Fine player, great contract, solid contributor. Don't think there's any star path there. And I'd say those numbers probably give you the same impression. The 8th overall pick in this draft was Obert Toppin, which I did not like that pick at all. Toppin just got rewarded with a 4-year, $60 million contract, which... Was it 60 or 80? 60, I think. Oh, God, it better not have been 80. Now I need to go double check that as well because that's a big number that has made me very upset if that's actually the case. No, 4 years, 60. That's a little bit better. I don't think he's going to be a starter, but 13th in estimated wins and 11th in Darko. The shooting improved significantly, still terrible defensively, and that's always going to limit what he can do. The 6th overall pick is Onyeka Okongwu. Now, he's only 14th in estimated wins because he's been a backup for 4 years. A very weird situation in Atlanta. I thought he started to really show a few more things, even though his rim protection numbers dropped this season, but the minutes pushed up. He is still 10th overall in Darko plus minus, which is not the greatest result from being drafted 6th, but as a backup, I think he's looked all right. The 5th overall pick was Isaac Okoro. He's 15th in estimated wins, 13th in Darko. A lot of these high draft picks do not always, do get the benefit of the doubt in terms of getting extra minutes given to them, like Okoro, but as we get further into their career, minutes tend to drop off. Toppin and Okongwu, opposite situations, them very limited minutes early, ramping up. Okoro's 13th in Darko, 15th in estimated wins. For pick 5, that's not great. Better than the guy picked before him, but that's sort of where he sits. It's another second round player. Number 35, the cashier, Xavier Tillman. 16th overall in estimated wins, 12th in Darko. Now, his situation this year was incredibly weird. He could not hit any shots at all. None. Like, he's not a good rim protector necessarily, but he's strong. He can rebound. He gets steals. He can pass. But he just couldn't hit even twos. It was a disgustingly bad season, and then a knee injury hurt him. But as the 35th pick, being the 12th best guy at Darko and 16th in estimated wins, W. Good value. The 10th pick was Sticks, Jalen Smith. Did not like that pick at the time. I would say that has worked out to be true, that he shouldn't have been picked there. 17th overall in estimated wins. He's had some roles, and for some reason the Bulls gave him 3 years, $27 million to be their backup center, I'm guessing. Although you could argue that he might be better than Vucevic this season. I know, I'm more down on Vuce than others. Jalen Smith, 19th in Darko. And then Peyton Pritchard, the 26th overall pick. He is 18th in estimated wins, but after a really strong end to the season and some big moments, he's up to 8th in Darko. I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think another team is going to take him on as a starter, but he has been much better than that 26th overall pick would suggest. The 14th overall pick was Aaron Nesmith. He didn't do anything while he was in Boston, went to Indiana and reimagined himself into an elite perimeter defender who shoots much better now than he did in Boston. There are still some concerns with how we can ramp anything up offensively. 19th in estimated wins, 14th in Darko. You couldn't really ask for much more than that. That's sort of bang on number 14. Number 15 was the next guy, Cole Anthony, picked one spot after Aaron Nesmith. His estimated wins were 20th and his Darko is 33rd. A huge drop-off for Cole Anthony this season. He started out the season the first month or so really red hot and then just cratered. And I really don't know where they go now. Gary Harris is back there. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was signed. Jalen Suggs, Mr. Black, is still there. Where does Cole fit? I still have some faith that Cole, if he went to another team and started, he would be much better and put up really good numbers, especially for fantasy, but it was a big downturn for him last season. Here's a huge one. The 58th pick, the third last pick in the draft, was the big fella, Paul Reed. He's 21st in estimated wins despite never playing until this season, and 7th in Darko. Now, it looks like, again, he is probably going to be squeezed in Philadelphia. He might have already been cut or traded. I don't know. But the 7th best player, Darko plus minus, Paul Reed, was the backup to Embiid. He won't be, though, because they drafted a Dem Boner, but they signed Andre Drummond. So I don't know what happens with Reed now. But other teams should be looking to get him. Maybe there's an Isaiah Hartenstein situation happening for him in 2 years' time. That's huge value. And the other one was also drafted by Philadelphia, and they foolishly cut him. At number 49, Isaiah Joe, who had 22nd in estimated wins, did nothing in Philadelphia. They cut him. The Thunder signed him, and here we go. Joe, 6th best player out of this entire draft class for Darko plus minus. Absolutely elite shooter. Can handle the ball a little bit, but that is huge value. The 20th overall pick was the big sneeze himself, Precious Achiuwa. Don't really like Precious as a player. You're well aware of that. I think he's a out-of-control offensive guy whose defense is solid at times but can be erratic. But overall, 23rd estimated wins, 24th in Darko. Feels about right. He has improved significantly the last 2 years. And then the next guy is another very late pick, the 52nd overall pick, who actually played for Philadelphia this season, Kenyon Martin Jr. 25th overall in estimated wins and 34th in Darko. Really solid numbers for him in Houston, sort of disappeared in LA and then did nothing for Philadelphia. And you worry about, he did some early success, but I worry about where he sort of sits now. I don't even know if he's going to get signed by another team, to be honest. So it was a nice little early flash for him, but not really sure where we go now. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. You've heard this saying before, and it's true. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's very easy to see people on social media and get envious of what they're doing. Oh, look how good she looks. Look at this guy's car, house. What a life they're living. But this stuff's all for show. It's not necessarily real. Instagram's not reality. And that stuff can eat at you. Therapy can help you focus more on you. What do you want? What are you doing in your life? Not envying things that honestly are meant to be fake. That's where therapy can come in, or one of the things that therapy can do. So if you've been thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Or if that doesn't work out, you can switch therapists to somebody else at any point with no charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, let's go through the next batch of these players in this draft. The 4th overall pick, 5 years, $90 million for this man. Patrick Williams, 25th in estimated wins. Yes, he had some injuries, cost him quite a bit of time. 20th in Darko, though. They've just drafted a player in the same position, Matas Buzelis. So he's 5 years, $90 million for Pat Williams. Is he going to be a bench player? Don't tell me he's going to play the 3 next to Matas. I still don't know what Chicago is doing. We're 4 years in. I know he's missed a lot of time. I am losing any hope that Williams is going to be good. But there we are. What about this guy? The last pick in the draft, Sam Merrill. 60th overall, 26th in estimated wins, and 27th on Darko. Remember, he just did not play really until this season. So to be 26th in estimated wins, it's because of what he did this year. And he has found a role as an elite three-point bomber. That's what he does. He did a lot of other stuff in college. You'll never do that in the NBA, but he can do a little bit of it. The shooting is just elite, though. The 42nd overall pick, Big Dick Nick Richards, who started most of this season. His advanced stats are not particularly good for a guy that's been in a role for the last few years. 27th overall, estimated wins, 24th in Darko. Totally fine, reasonable as a backup center, and that is it. Joshy Green, who I believe, maybe we got clarity on this, I believe he's been traded to Charlotte as a part of the Klay Thompson to Dallas sign and trade. You would probably know that by now, but I'm still waiting for clarification on that. He's 28th overall in estimated wins and 26th on Darko. He had a big drop-off this season, Green, and a lot of his early really strong shooting numbers seemed a little bit like a mirage. Big opportunity for him this last season to step up and take a big role, and he wasn't able to do it. Injuries have been a problem. Look, there is a spot, I guess, in Charlotte. Maybe you make the argument he could start next to LaMelo Ball and then have Miller and Salan as the other guys. Maybe. I don't think so, though. I'm not sure he's ever going to have a huge impact, Josh Green. I shouldn't have included this guy here, really, because he's not in the league and he barely played, but for some reason I slid him in there, and that's Jalen Harris, the 59th overall pick. He is 29th in estimated wins. He barely played. And then he got suspended for a year, never came back. He doesn't have a Darko ranking because he's not in the league. So there's a bunch of players who aren't in the league and they don't have Darko ratings anymore. And there's a bunch of players in this middle zone here who have such low estimated wins. They're around 0, but there are a lot of guys below them because sometimes the bad players get the extra draft capital and play minutes, and they are so bad that it makes them have negative wins. They are costing their team significantly. So while they might be better players than the guys who give you 0.1 estimated wins or negative 0.1 over 4 years, but that guy's barely played at all. And that's where we look at like Harris at that. So it's in that 30 to 32 range for guys in estimated wins. They're the guys who just barely play or sitting at 0, negative 0.1, 0.1 as your estimated wins because they just don't play that much. Saban Lee was picked at 38, 30th in estimated wins, 23 in EPM. Like he's fine as a defender, can't really shoot. And that's where we get to a bunch of these guys. Now, I've cut out most of the guys who don't have roles in the NBA now, so I'm not going through all 60 picks. Number 50 is Skylar Mays. We saw him have a moment for the Blazers earlier this season. He's with the Lakers at the moment. 50th pick, 31st in EPM. Estimated wins, and 35th on Darko. Whatever, that's pretty good for 50th. Udoka Azubuike, terrible first-round pick when it happened. Remains a terrible pick. Barely plays. 39th in estimated wins and 36th in Darko. Zeke Naji. I had some hope for Zeke Naji. Obviously did not work out. 46th overall in estimated wins and 38th in Darko. As you know, like 46th there for Zeke Naji is way less than where Skylar Mays sits because Naji actually played and was negative. Vic Krejci, 50th in estimated wins. He was picked 37th. Thought Vic could be better than that. 28th in Darko. I really like what I saw from Vic Krejci this season. I thought that step up was interesting. I think that 28th makes more sense. Now, I don't know why I wrote that number there next to Killian Hayes, because that is definitely not the correct number. I must have got confused with his actual draft spot. So Killian Hayes is not the 7th ranked player in terms of his value. He's actually the 53rd best player in terms of estimated wins. And he's not in the league anymore, but he was the 7th overall pick. I really like Killian Hayes. Disastrous. Couldn't shoot. Could defend really well. But part of the reason his estimated wins are so low is because he played so much. So he was able to be such a negative force overall because he played more than all these other guys. At number 13, another guy that I liked. Another miss. Kyra Lewis Jr. went at 13 in the lottery. 54th overall in estimated wins and 33rd in Darko. And now I'm not really sure he's going to have a spot in the NBA. Some later guys who are interesting to look at here. Number 45, Jordan Nwora, who's bounced around, had a few little moments. Picked at 45, 55th in estimated wins, 34th in Darko. Not bad. But you'll note, he's been a negative player at times, but he's gotten more minutes, pushes the estimated wins down. Same as 50-point legend Malachi Flynn. First round pick, 29th overall, 56th in wins, and 31st in Darko. And here's where the big one is. The number 2 overall pick. What a disaster this is. James Wiseman, Blunty. 2nd overall, 57th in estimated wins because he's so negative. Like he just was bad for 4 years. He missed an entire year as well. If he had played that year, well, you could argue maybe he developed more, but also I could argue he would have taken more wins away. In Darko, he's 37th in DPM. Just a terrible pick that never panned out. And the next one, pick 17, was Alexei Pokusevsky, who I'd like to flyer on. He was so bad early on in his career, and he hasn't really taken he's taken some steps, but he's still not good. Not sure what happens with him. He played for Charlotte at the end of last season. 58th overall in estimated wins for Poku and 32nd in Darko. And I want to include these two guys. They're not in the league anymore, but they were solid enough picks who played early in their career. 34th overall pick, Teo Maledon, the Salt Flake, Theo Maledon. He was 59th in estimated wins with no Darko because he's not on the team. And RJ Hampton, 24th pick, first round, went from Denver to Orlando. Was in Detroit for a period of time, has been bad. 60th overall. Out of all the 60 picks, he's the worst. Absolutely the lowest estimated wins. Not in the NBA anymore, so no Darko stat. Now, let's look at some undrafted guys, which is important when we take a look at the 2024 draft and the guys that didn't get drafted. Trey Alexander, Jalen Bridges, PJ Hall, Justin Edwards. You can find some value in some undrafted guys. Let's start with Najee Marshall, who just got a 3-year, almost $30 million contract. Going to come off the bench for the Mavericks, I'm guessing, behind Klay Thompson, but be a really good perimeter defender. 24th in estimated wins, 29th on Darko. Hall Pass legend, Lindy Waters III, now in Golden State. Could he have a role there with Klay gone? Maybe. Budget Klay? Maybe. 31st in estimated wins, 36th in Darko. Omer Yurtseven. Not someone I'm a big fan of, but he's actually looking for a team at the moment too, waived by the Jazz. 31st in estimated wins, 36th in Darko. Lamar Stevens, played a little bit for Memphis last season, been in Boston and Cleveland. 45th in EPM, 31st in Darko. Matt Ryan, Matty Ice, 51st in estimated wins and 45th on Darko. Braxton Key, who was on a 2-way for the Nuggets, 34th on estimated wins and 39th on Darko. 6 more undrafted guys. Again, 12 guys who were in the NBA last season as undrafted players from the 2020 draft. Mamadi Diakite, who ended the season for the Knicks. He hasn't been a good player very much, but he was on a roster. 57th overall in estimated wins and 50th on Darko. Jeff Dowden, who showed some flashes for the Sixers last season. 59th overall in wins and 21st in Darko. That 21st is an eye-popping number. What? Trent Forrest, played for the Hawks last season on a 2-way deal. 68th overall in estimated wins, pretty bad. 42nd overall in Darko. Yeah, not terrible as an undrafted guy. Ashton Hagans had some moments in Portland. 34th in wins, 33rd in Darko. Kevon Harris, who's probably not going to be back for the Magic, but he's a bit of a scorer. 32nd in wins and 41st in Darko. Remember that 30 to 33 zone is a lot of the guys whose minutes are really low and they're about 0 in estimated wins. And lastly, Trevelyan Queen, 46th overall, played for the Rockets, played for the Sixers, maybe, but I don't really think there's much going on there. 37th overall in Darko. So again, that's 12 guys undrafted from the 2020 draft who were on rosters 4 years later. Najee Marshall clearly the best of them, but Lindy Waters also has a shot at being an interesting player. So when we look at the 2024 draft, we look at our dynasty picks, like this guy was picked 5th, therefore I've got to take him 5th in the dynasty rookie draft. It doesn't really work out. And that's what we wanted to find out from this class. If you think that someone at 18 is better than someone at 10, cool, you might be right. If you think that the 33rd ranked player is better than the 20th pick, you might be right. You also might be wrong, but you might be right. So I wanted to do two things. I wanted to correlate the pick number versus the rank in estimated wins, and correlate the pick number along with the year 4 Darko plus minus number. So what are the results? This is the results. The R squared coefficient, well, the R squared for the pick number versus the estimated rank, 0.087. If you know anything about R numbers and R squared numbers, obviously it's a positive number, meaning the lower your pick, if you're picked at 2, then you're more likely to have a better rank. There is a positive correlation, right? So yes, in general, very weakly, the draft position that you were picked at means slightly better odds of being a higher rank in these stats. But the R squared, 0.087, that basically means the variance in production is I think 8.7% of that variance is accounted for by the draft pick number. That's a very low number. That's a very low number. If we look at the pick number versus the year 4 Darko plus minus rank, well, it's about the same. It still was the overall Pearson coefficient, the R, was a positive. It was a moderate positive. It was a weak positive for estimated wins rank. But when you look at the R squared, 0.140. So 14% of the variance can be explained by the draft pick number. 86% are other factors. So, what does it tell us? In the end, I don't know that it tells us... I know this sounds stupid. I don't know that it tells us anything. And you say, why did I listen for 32 minutes for you to say none of this means anything? That's not exactly what I'm saying. Well, it's not what I'm saying at all, to be honest. What I am saying is that what it does show is that draft position is not the be-all and end-all of a player's value. You do not have to defer to what a team thinks, to what the NBA thinks, to what a consensus mock draft thinks, to what I think about my big board. You don't have to correlate any of that, because if I went through every other year's draft, guarantee you're going to have very similar numbers. The value of a player through that early portion of their career, there's a part of it, there is a correlation, a weak correlation to draft pick value. But it is such a small part of the formula. So when I am calculating things like Dynasty rookie rankings, the actual draft pick position is a part of it. But it is not all of it. There is stat translations. There is my valuation of a player and their overall ability, because one of the key things to getting value in fantasy is playing minutes. And to play minutes, you generally have to be good. And that doesn't always correlate to draft pick number. And eventually, over a few years, that stuff figures itself out. So, that's draft number. Draft slot is a part of it. But do not defer all of your thoughts to, well, the NBA picked players in this order, therefore that must be how good they are. Well, Jalen Bridges didn't get picked. He must be worse than the other 58 guys that got picked. Trey Alexander, I had him at 23rd. He didn't get picked. Well, I don't sit there and go, well, I guess there are 58 blokes better than him. Because you still have to, that is such a small part of the overall valuation idea. And I hope, again, this is not to tell you that these picks are the ones that you need to look at. As you can tell in that draft, pick 1, great hit. Pick 3, pretty good. Pick 2, disgraceful. Pick 4, really bad. Pick 5, not great. Pick 6, whatever. 7, terrible. 8, whatever. 9, fine. 12, amazing. 21, unbelievable. 25, great. 30, fantastic. But that doesn't mean that any of that stuff carries over each year. Just be aware that the correlation between pick number and value is very low. And that's the takeaway. The second takeaway is to use your thumbs and hit them up on the video. It's to leave a comment and to subscribe. And I hope you like this sort of video. Again, it's just the idea to keep in your head. Value what you want to value. Don't defer your opinions to NBA GMs. Stuff is always going to be wildly different. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.